The Katamari series has been around for over 20 years now, but outside of a few remasters, there hasn't been a new entry since the PS Vita game in 2012. I'm well aware that there have been remasters in some mobile games in the past decade, but besides that, and the new content we got in the recent We Love Katamari reroll, this series hasn't been all too active in recent years. I'm a relatively new Katamari fan, but it's quickly become one of my favorite game franchises of all time, and when I'm a fan of something, I tend to look into absolutely everything about it. And after digging through the history of this amazing game series, I stumbled across something interesting. I learned about a Katamari game that was not only forgotten, but completely lost to time. A Korean exclusive Katamari MMO RPG called Katamari Damacy Online. Katamari Damacy Online Roll Prince was a South Korean exclusive online multiplayer Katamari game that went under the radar for a lot of fans around the world. Developed by Bluebird Studio, Katamari Online seemed to go through a pretty odd development cycle. The game was rumored in 2006, officially confirmed by Namco in 2007, and after 3 years of radio silence, it was released in 2010. From what we know, there were a few open beta periods during 2009 and early 2010. It officially launched in February of 2010 and received about 2 years of support before the game's servers shut down in 2012, with no hint of an international release or revival. Outside of a healthy amount of promotional material that was archived, there's only been a few videos and screenshots documenting the actual game itself. And the more I look into it, the more devastating it is because I probably won't ever get to experience it. Even though it was released publicly for a brief period, it feels like one of those dream games that aren't officially confirmed to exist until you learn about its cancellation years later. But tell me, when you hear Katamari MMO, you might think, what the hell could that possibly look like, right? Well, you might be surprised to learn that it kinda just played like a Katamari game. Now correct me if I'm wrong, I don't play a lot of MMOs, but MMOs based on existing games don't typically play like their console counterparts, at least not one-to-one. There's usually an attempt at altering gameplay mechanics to better fit an online multiplayer environment, and Katamari Online does do that to some extent. There is a heavy focus on multiplayer, but overall, the core gameplay of Katamari is still intact. And judging from the screenshots we have, it didn't seem like a web-based MMO either, as it had a client you would just download straight to your PC. You were even able to play with a controller just like you would on console, making it the closest thing to a native Katamari game on PC years before Katamari Reroll came to Steam. We don't really know about everything that was in the game content-wise, but from what we do know, there was a fair amount of new stuff here, including new songs, new cousins, new gameplay mechanics, levels, and modes. The soundtrack for Katamari Online was a mix between new and old stuff, with some of the soundtrack actually being just straight up available to listen to on YouTube. As for the new cousins, there are 30 of them, most of which are playable, some of which are NPCs, but all of them are exclusive to this game and never appear again in the entire series, which seems like just a waste. Because they had such cool designs. Some of my favorites are the cousins based on real-life objects, such as Cheddar, who is literally just a slice of cheese, Jang, whose head is just a dresser drawer, and 8-Bit, which is supposed to resemble an old computer but also looks like this cool little robot guy. From what I understand, you were able to buy these cousins from shops with in-game currency. A currency that you could earn by simply playing the game, but also a currency you could just straight up buy with real money. Considering this was a free-to-play game, they kinda had to monetize it somehow. Buying cousins is one way to do that, I guess? But as you'll see, there is more you can buy with this currency. Moving on to the gameplay side of things, as I said, it looks very similar to the mainline Katamari games. I mean, I didn't play the game myself, but just by looking at some of the videos, it just looks like you simply roll up objects to make the largest Katamari ball you can until time is up. One of the only main gameplay differences is the charging or dashing mechanic, which now requires a meter to use, when before you could just move the joysticks up and down really fast to use it whenever you wanted. There were also 2 main multiplayer modes, including Crash Battle and Rolling Battle. Rolling Battle was a mode that tasked the players of getting bigger Katamari or more objects than the other player to win. Crash Battle was pretty much the same thing, but you played on a battle stage from the first Katamari game. Both modes also had power-ups to spice things up, including a shark missile that knocked off the other player's objects, an octopus that covered the other player's Katamari to make it slower, a squid that inked the other player's screen, a rock that made the other Katamari unable to move, a spider that sprayed webs over the other Katamari, potentially making it slower, a hook that takes an object off the other Katamari, King's card which might have acted like a sort of shield, and a siren which made a very loud noise, but the effect is unknown. Both the multiplayer modes were available to play normally or in teams, which I'm not entirely sure how many players were able to battle at the same time. I'd assume more than 4, but I don't actually know. Outside of the multiplayer modes, the other main way of interacting with other players was the game's lobby, which looked like a typical MMO hub world with shops, little activities, and spots to just hang out chatting. It looked like the shops offered a bunch of different customization items for your prints, including the typical hats and accessories, but also shoes, gloves, face and body customization options, as well as a customization option for your Katamari ball. So I guess you could have just changed the way your ball looked instead of having a random ball every time you played. And of course, with this being an MMO, you also had your own little house to customize to your liking. Other than that, there's not much else I can really cover with this game. I guess I could bring up the fact that it had a couple system where you can seemingly date other players, which is kind of weird considering all of the players would be cousins. Or I could also bring up the fact that there was a Pringles collaboration at some point, but that's really it. There's only so much I could talk about with Katamari Online before we get into unknown territory. Not only do I not understand Korean, which makes things a bit harder, but the knowledge we have on this game is so limited I might end up getting things wrong just because we don't know the full details. That being said, I do want to know more about it because it looked like a fun time. If I was a Katamari fan back then, and also lived in South Korea, I would have loved to play this. At the end of the day, Katamari Online is another unfortunate case of lost media, and there's a chance we may never get to play this game again. But I'm going to take this opportunity to send a message. If you have any interest in recovering or archiving this game, please spread the word. Reach out to people in the Katamari community who might have leads to people that downloaded this game in the past. The game had a downloadable client, so it might be possible to get something out of that. I know the servers for the game are down, and those servers might have hosted most of the assets. But if we can get that client archived and maybe some of the data that was cached, there is a chance we could end up recovering something. And who knows, that something might end up being the full game. Having this be a South Korean exclusive game makes the search a bit difficult, but I do think we could end up getting a semi-playable version of Katamari Online up and running with custom servers one day. I know this wasn't a Little Big Planet video, which is usually my specialty, but I wanted to do something different for once. LBP had a grim year last year, and I kinda wanted to move away from that for a little bit, and start off 2025 with something new. If you ended up liking it, let me know in the comments. I do want to talk more about obscure gaming stuff like this, alongside my LBP content. But thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.